Hello and welcome to my latest video. I've been lazy as fuck and haven't made any in a long time, forgive me. I just haven't been very motivated, I guess. Anyway, this video is called Troops Secrets Revisited. And the reason I say revisited is because I think WWM did a pretty good job in his video where he unveiled the strength ratio of different troops and different troop tiers. I'm doing all this in one take. I actually tried to do this video before and I fucked up many times and I kept starting over, so if I fuck up I'm just gonna keep going. Yep, so this is the video. Okay, so this video is going to discuss how to win a fight in Vikings. What do the two different troops types mean and all the different stats and all those different things. So what's the most important thing? How do you win a fight in Vikings? Well, you gotta have a bigger army. No shit, Nick. But what does that actually mean? Okay, so for the first picture I wanted to show you is what happens when you have two identical army sizes meeting each other on a neutral place. And by neutral place I mean a tile, like one of those resource tiles. The 100 T1s, they both don't have any stats at all. They're all vanilla. There's no attack, defense, nothing. They don't have any VIP bonuses, nothing. Just completely empty. And they're the same. They have the same stats, both of them. When 100 troops of the same strength meets 100 troops of the same strength, they both lose 80%. And this is important because what's happening here is both armies actually lost everything. They both lost 100 troops, but Plarium makes it so that you can only lose 80% max of your army that you send or that you're defending with. So when you lose, you're never going to lose 100%. You're always at most going to lose 80%, but you're always going to lose 80% when you lose. Now, as you can see, both sides actually lost 80%. So in a sense it was a tie, but because the you'll see it says defense succeeded, you actually get to keep the tile and you have 20 troops left on the tile. So the attacker actually has to win to knock you off the tile. And if this was a town, then it wouldn't burn. But in reality it's a tie. Okay, so that's an important principle and it'll come up later in this video. So I mentioned WWM in my intro. He introduced this ratio a while back, a long time ago, and I think he was way ahead of his time. He figured out this ratio by doing a bunch of tests. Like, he actually sat there and attacked with all kind of different numbers of different troops, and this is what he came up with. And I came up with my own ratio. Now, my ratio, I didn't use testing initially to get these numbers. I actually used the formula, and you can actually see it up here. There's a formula here. And this formula is square root of attack times defense times health. So as an example, if you do 366 times 366 times 366, you'll get a number 49 million. The square root of that is 7001. Which is 7001, it was like 99 something, so 77002 is just rounded up. And if you do the same thing for T1s, you'll get 1 million, and the square root of 1 million is 1,000. So if you divide 7,000 by 1,000, you'll get 7. So 1 T5 is literally 7 T1s. Now they introduced T6s recently, and 9 T6s are equal to 1 T1. So if you have 1 million T1s, then if you have 9 million T1s, 9.010 million T1s or whatever, then it takes 1 million T6s to kill them, assuming you guys have everything else the same like we did here, right? And I just gave you a small sample. It's like, I really did test this. I didn't just say, oh yeah, WWM sounds right and this number kind of makes sense too. But I actually tested this, and you can see that it's very close here. You see the 799? This is actually a 79.9% loss, so the defender won. But it's so fucking close that you might as well say it's the same. So 9.13 and 1,000 is almost the same exact army size. And again, these don't have any knowledge whatsoever. And this is some tests I did with T5s. Again, you see it's between 704 and 005, very close to this. It's never going to be exactly this because of the rounding. So if I actually did like 10,000 T6s versus 90,000 T1s, it would be even closer. But ain't nobody got time for that. Okay, now let's look at the other thing. So the other thing is the stats, 100, 100, 100. So if this ratio is correct, attack, defense, and health, then why do these stats even matter? Why not just name them all stat 1, stat 2, stat 3, right? Why have them called these different things? Well, this formula is only used to determine whose army is bigger. It's not used to determine the losses, right? So the first thing the Plarium does anytime a fight happens is they figure out which side has more troops. And based on who has more troops, that is when these stats start to matter. Now, the attack is your attack. No. But your defense and life are what I call the health pool. And the health pool formula is life times defense divided by 100. So in this example, the attack is 100, no, and the health pool is 102 because what you're doing is you basically 100 times 1. So it's 100 times 100%, okay? So if this was 150, it would be 1.5. Would be if the defense was 150, it would be 1.5. It would be 150. I'll show you more about this in a second. Now, the other thing you need to understand is a term called saturation and overwhelmed. So, like I said, the very first thing that Plarium does is it figures out who has the bigger army size. Once they do that, the army with less troops starts to lose their attack. Okay? But there's a limit to how much attack you can lose. So, and in my findings, the most attack that they can remove is 48%. So, and here's an example of that. So you have 43,000 defenders, and you lose 520 troops when 1,000 attack you. Here you have 1,537 defenders, and again you only lost 520. What I'm trying to show you here is that there's a limit to how much attack you can lose. So you saw that there's a huge difference between 1537 and 43,000, right? But the amount lost is identical. 1537 is an important number because as soon as you go to 1536, you suddenly start losing more. The overwhelmed is at max, what I call the saturation point. And I mean, you can call it whatever the fuck you want. The saturation point is where the attacker loses 48% of their attack. Here, it's not fully saturated, so they actually didn't lose the complete number of attack. They lost, 0.1% less. And the ratio is, according to this, 1.53 to 1. So in order to completely overwhelm your attacker, your mass of troops needs to be at least 153% bigger. I did more in-depth saturation tests, and I can actually show you. So you see these numbers. I'm going to show you the pictures from this. So you believe me that I actually did do these tests. See? And in the beginning, like I showed you before, when you have 1,000 attackers, 1,000 defenders, you're going to lose 800 on each side. But then as soon as you add one defender, the attacker still loses 80% because they lost. But the defender wins and they lose 7 less troops. You add 2 and suddenly they lost 12 less troops. You add 10 and suddenly they lost 33 less troops. You see how it's like a curve. And it maxes out at, here it says minus 280, but you have to remember that they didn't lose 100%, they lost 80%. So you add the 200 and you get that 480 that I talk about. Right? So that's And as you can see, 43,000 and 1538, you get the same amount of losses. So the key takeaway here is that this drops very quickly, and that the max you can lose is 48%. So now that I've explained that, I'm going to show you how I figured out the health pool and why here I say, what do the stats mean? Well, the health pool is a combination of life and defense. Here are some examples. Remember that the attacker loses 48%. So here we have 100 T1s, ranged T1s, and they're both ranged, attacking 100 T4s. Now, we know from this that from my little ratio that this is really like 500 T1s 500 T1s defending against 100, which is way more than enough to get full saturation. If we do the math, we'll say 52 because 48% is lost, times 1,000, so the total attack of the attacker is 5,200. The health pool of the defender is 300 times 3, because your defense is 300. Your health pool is 300 because that's the base stats of a T4. I can actually show you here the base stats of a T4 by doing this. Here, see, I'd say 300, 300, 300. Anyway, so the health pool becomes 900. If you divide 5,200 by 900, you get 5.777. If you round that up, you get 6. Okay? Following me so far? I hope so. Now, by this, I was like, okay, so how many T1s is it going to take to kill just one? We know that the health pool is 900, so my attack needs to be more than 900. If you send 18, the total attack of that, 52 times 18, is 936. Right? 936 divided by 900 is 1.04. And that becomes 1. Now, if I would have did 17, it wouldn't have been enough because you would have had less than 900. Honestly, don't know what would have happened because I didn't test. But I knew, I wanted to make sure that the health pool number was correct. And I was like, well, let's make it so I kill only one. And it worked. I did this with T5s, T5 attacking T5 to make sure it wasn't just T1s doing that. And it worked here too. You see, the T5 attack, if you divide it by, if you take out 48%, you'll get 190. 190 times, 190.32 times 1,000 is 190,320. The health pool for a T5 is 366 times 3.66, which ends up being 1339.52. If you divide that, you get 142, which is what I lost. I was like, okay, well, let's make sure that it works even when you start adding percents, because maybe that only works for vanillas. So I did the same thing here. I'm not gonna go through every number, but you see it still works out. You still get 7.96, which rounded up becomes 8. So it works. This is correct. Health pool is 100 times 1. I additionally started to do reducer tests, and I used this health pool theory as a basis for understanding how reducers work. But I must admit that I'm not done with figuring out exactly how reducers work. And I don't have the pictures from when I did these tests. But what I found out is I couldn't do completely vanilla because I wanted, these troops have to have some percents, because if you look here, if you look at the hero tree skill, and I actually set up a hero set with just before reducers, you see that you have to have some stats in order to get right before reducers. And I wanted, god damn, that's slow. I wanted the reducers to be the only thing that's different. So you have to have some stats if you are right before the part where you start adding reducers. That is why I didn't have, that's why they weren't 100% vanilla to begin with. But they were pretty close. It was 102, 103, 103 in the health pool. The takeaway from this whole reducer test is this: when you add nothing but the hero skills reducers, they literally will take away half of your attacker's attack. Literally half, 50%. So, and you can see it really easy. 492 divided by 2 is 246. So the defender loses 2 times less troops by just adding a 50% reducer. I actually fucked up. I did 29 but not 30. But you can see that adding a boost is very close to what 29% offense reduction does. So I can safely say that hero skills 30% and boost 30% do the same exact thing. But if you do both the 30% boost and a 50% reducer, that caps out at, over here, this is what the actual reduction was. You see it was 50 for here, but here it's only 61%. However, the attack per troop is almost exactly 20% of what it was originally. So I think when they fixed the reducers from the God mode, I think this is what they fixed. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about as far as God mode, you don't need to. It's a little calamity that happened with Plarium, where they made the reducers too strong after Castle 31 came out. But they ended up fixing it, and this is how I think they fixed it. So real quick, what are the conclusions? The conclusions are this. As an attacker, your goal is, number one, you want to have the bigger army size, so that means all three stats are important. But if you're attacking and you're overwhelmed, the only stat that's important is your attack. Because everything else just doesn't matter, and for that reason, you really want to use Taffies and the attack gem. That's that conclusion. As a defender, your attack matters because it's going to define how big your army size is. But when you're overwhelming your opponent, the most important thing is your health and defense. And the number three, last conclusion that I draw from this is that your reducer hero skills are by very far the strongest thing in this game. And I don't mean just attack hero skills, I mean all of them, all three of them. That's why people in farm mode get absolutely murdered, is because they're losing 50% of each stat, which is a lot. I mean, I want to finish this video because KVK is about to start. So, you know, see, it's almost 8 o'clock. But just imagine losing 50% of each stat. It's not, you're losing more than just half of your army. So yeah, I hope you like this video. Like and subscribe. I hope you learned something. I think even if you've been playing this game for a while, I think you would have learned something here, because all this shit was very new to me and it took me a while to figure out. So send it to your friends if you liked it. I appreciate it. Thank you. Peace.